Hi class, I'll be doing my presentation on the ethics in genomics. My name is Junhui He. There are many ethical issues when it comes to genomics. It is problematic because it is hard to determine whether or not it is ethical to inform the consumer about their result. It also causes concern over ownership, privacy, accuracy, race, discrimination, bioethics, and accessibility. Vagueness about consent could also lead to the company using the consumer's data to make a profit without the participants knowing due to the lack of engagement with the disclaimer. It raises a question on whether or not a simple click or a checkoff of yes is enough to be used to ask consent. Since genetic testing is able to reveal so much about the individual, such as physical traits like the color of the eye, hair, skin texture, height, and appearance. It can also possibly be used for leading to discrimination of a certain race, trait, or a mutation that a population of individual express that could possibly pass down to future generation. Another question rises on whether or not it is ethical to sell data for the use of pharmaceutical companies, since they will be using it to develop new drugs to fight against new variants and new diseases and health conditions. We live in a time where much require redoing. Genomics is part of this deepening crisis of governance. I really like this quote from Jenny Reardon, which said, "In an age where fish in the sea are depleted, trees on the land burn, and oil in the earth dries up, data from our flesh and blood has become the new natural resource that states and corporations seek to harness to create things of value." In Jenny Reardon's article, Why and How Bioethics Must Turn Towards Justice, a Modest Proposal, provides an example with prison with open science as a metaphor, trying to demonstrate the difficulty of scientists who are part of the Human Genome Project deciding whether or not it is ethical to make a profit off of the subject's result. The genetic analysis and genomic becomes biocapital, in which it generates economic capital and entangles with the generation of biological life is no longer adequate. In particular, the much cherished moral economy of sharing within gene mapping community lost out to competition and capital. Reardon's point is associated with the model presented by Colin Koopman in the article titled Coding the Self, the Infopolitics and Biopolitics of Genetic Science. Presents three analytical approach to conceptualizing the political and ethical challenges of genetic science. The three models are politics model, biopolitical model, and infopolitical model. There is a recurring challenge whether there is new science and technology emerges question whether it will result in new consequences, and whether these consequences is able to be governed throughout the current legal regulation. In the state political model, politics takes the form primarily of law, regulation, prohibitions, mandates, coercion, and perhaps even state-sanctioned force. Example of genetic science under this model is the legality of genetic cloning, guidance for germline genetic engineering, regulation of use using genetic information for risk assessment in insurance, and etc. If genetic analysis is accessible for risk assessment in insurance, then is it ethical to be denying healthcare for a unborn baby who is likely to have a mutation or a certain disease? Will they be denied for applying insurance or getting a job? Benefits of medical genomics will be expensive, exacerbate inequality in healthcare. There are limited incentives for the for-profit entities to focus on health problems of developing countries, and pharmaceutical companies will be an advantage knowing those insights and using the data to create drugs that are catered to cure the specific illness. Where traditional ethical issues such as informed consent, confidentiality, and such as altered because the change in the nature of genetic information to become profit driven, having an impact in social, economic, political, and the culture of those in developing countries. Biopolitics is considered questions of politics and of power as concentrated on humans specifically as living beings, whereas the state politics model may implicitly accept that the humans governed by our law are living beings. The entire point of biopolitic model is to come to terms with power transaction in which human matter precisely because they are living beings. That is, regardless of if they are healthy or sick, flourishing or dying, concerning about their ownership of the genetic material. And lastly, infopolitics focuses on question of politics and power in terms of the data and information that are increasingly the concern to how we live our lives. Infopolitics is a politics of our information or a politic addresses to human beings as subject of data, that is, as creatures whose lives are significantly structured by and described in terms of their data. Infopolitics, so defined, clearly extends beyond genetic data. It is a model for understanding issues as wide range as the role of fake news in elections, the function of social media in redefining selfhood for youth, and the role of psychometric evaluation in determining educational and employment opportunity. It will lead to discrimination. Race and discrimination has been a big reoccurring issue in the United States regardless to genomic. But with the help of genomic, it can worsen the tension since the individual's genetic information is able to be reflected in their genetic sequence, which is unique for each individual. Progress in resolving ethical issues in genomics has been hard and slow because this is a difficult issue. Ethics in genomics has to dealt with fighting for justice for all race and not be used as a tool or method for discrimination. In Catherine Bliss' article titled Conceptualizing Race in the Genomic Age, discuss what are the unethical ways genomics can lead to discrimination and social inequality. Eugenics in the past was based in part of the notion that some people were born with filtered genes and that only those people should reproduce. It was also infused with notion of purity, hygiene, and defectiveness, all inspiring varying social and scientific movement that resulted in racial violence and inequality. Many scientists hope that everyone will one day have a gene chip that will follow them through their lives and guide them towards certain forms of healthcare, certain beneficial environments and programs. But if we are still envisioning race as determined by our gene and disease and behavior as being most prevalent in, if not downright belonging to a certain racial group, then how will we avoid creating a eugenic order that serves those who are already privileged and punish those who are not? The use of social genomic application using genome to investigate differences between population is the answer to that question. We must do so only for the sake of understanding the biological effects of discrimination against people perceived to be members of some of those populations. There are still many ethical issues surrounding genomics, and everyone has a different approach as to how it should be handled and what are its consequences. It's not an issue that will magically be resolved, tomorrow. It's something that much greater and needs the help of all humanity to settle upon. With advancement in technology, current regulation is not able to keep up with the new technology that is changing each day, with most regulations not being heavily enforced due to the consequences not being visible right away. There are many ethical issues surrounding genomics and has been a topic of debate since the 1990s. One way to see change is to spread awareness and have individuals educate themselves on the topic and increases the chances of debate. With new technology, there will always be problems, and this applies to genomics since there is still so much to learn about it. Here I have a picture showing the different bioethics that we face on a daily basis, and there's still debates around them. The first one on the left is human reproduction. The one next to it is shaping human beings. The next one is beginning and end of life. And then the middle one is health and society. Next is food, farming, and the environment. This one has to do with genetic engineering. The next one is crime and security. This one has to do with privacy and ownership. And then lastly, we have research ethics. And then I would like to thank you for listening. And here's my works cited. Thank you.